Hi, my name is Olivia, and I'm 30 years old. I serve as an officer in the United States Army, and no, my family was never proud of that. I was born into the kind of household people envy from the outside. For stories of polished brick in Beacon Hill, Boston. Chandeliers that glittered even during the day. My father, Richard, built a $25 million real estate empire from nothing. Or so he always said. My mother, Linda, made it her life's mission to protect that empire's image. And then there was Ethan, my older brother, groomed from birth to inherit it all. He was the mirror of my father's ambition, confident, polished, politically connected. And then there was me. I wasn't interested in wearing pearls to charity luncheons or perfecting my social smile. From the moment I could walk, I wanted to run, with purpose. Climb, test, train, lead. While Ethan stood next to our father at company events, I was running obstacle courses with ROTC. At 16, I memorized the Army Code of Conduct by heart. At 18, I earned my appointment to West Point. When I told my parents I'd accepted it, their faces fell like I'd announced I was joining a street circus. That's not a path for someone with your potential, my mother had said coldly. My father had nodded, swirling his bourbon. You're wasting the Wilson name. But I went anyway. I stood at my West Point graduation in full dress uniform, rows of medals polished, spine straight, jaw set. They attended, of course, sat stiffly in the front row, clapped politely, and left before the reception even started. They had an investor gala back in Boston, something about an urgent meeting with the Bradfords. Always the Bradfords. I used to think that if I worked harder, earned more, outranked expectations, they would see me. But their love had terms. It came only when convenient, only if it reflected well on them. So I carved my life elsewhere, on military bases, in desert deployments, inside command centers lit by digital maps, not crystal chandeliers. I found purpose in service, and I found love in a man who didn't flinch when I talked about sacrifice. His name is Adam, a public school teacher who helps veterans' children apply to college. He's the kind of man my parents can't understand and never will. But I still tried. I still hoped. Until the night they finally told me, in no uncertain terms, that I was no longer welcome. And that's where the story begins. It was supposed to be a celebration, one of those grand rooftop evenings where my family could show off their perfect lives to Boston's elite. Ethan and his wife Amanda had just announced they were expecting their first child, the first grandchild of the Wilson dynasty, as my father called it with an obnoxiously proud grin. Adam and I flew in from my duty station, just for the event. I had even taken 2 personal leave days, something rare in my role. I wanted to believe this time would be different. When we arrived at the venue, Linda greeted us with a smile so stiff it could have cracked. She leaned in and kissed both my cheeks without touching them. That dress is bold, she said, eyeing my deep green military-style gown. Didn't I send you the color theme for tonight? You didn't, I replied calmly. She waved her hand. Well, everyone else managed. Champagne and soft rose. No matter. The entire room was glowing in golds and creams, as if the color coordination was more important than the people inside it. Ethan was already holding court with a group of developers, Amanda beside him in a pale pink dress, perfectly styled and glowing from her pregnancy. We sat through dinner like polite strangers. The conversation was entirely centered around Ethan's upcoming promotion, Amanda's family's connection to a senator, and how well the next generation of Wilsons was positioning the family name. No mention of me. No mention of my last military commendation or the NATO operation I had just returned from. Nothing. The only time my name came up was when Amanda turned to me, all sweet smiles and fake warmth. So, Olivia, will you and Adam be at the family reunion next month? Mother's planning something fabulous at the Cape. Boston Magazine's doing a 3 generations feature. I blinked. Family reunion? A silence fell. Amanda's face twitched. You didn't know, she said carefully. I turned to Linda. She sipped her wine. It must have slipped my mind, she said with that familiar dismissiveness. Later that evening, as Adam and I waited in the hotel lobby for our coats, I overheard them. Richard, Ethan, Amanda, and Linda talking quietly near the fireplace. I just think it's better if Olivia and her teacher don't come, Richard said flatly. This isn't the right image. The Bradfords will be there, the governor too. Ethan and Amanda represent our future. Olivia, she chose another life. She's still family, Ethan said, voice hesitant. We've already told everyone she's too busy with work, Linda cut in. I didn't say a word that night, just held Adam's hand a little tighter as we rode the elevator up. And in the silence of that Boston hotel room, I knew the truth. I wasn't part of their picture anymore. Not even as a prop. Back at the base 2 days later, I tried to forget it all. Routine helps, a soldier's best defense. Wake up before dawn, run drills, lead briefings, maintain order. On the outside, I was composed. But something had shifted inside me, something deep and final. 3 weeks passed. Then came the moment that changed everything. I was in the middle of a tactical planning meeting with my commanding officer, Teresa, and 2 junior officers. We were organizing a logistics handoff for an upcoming multi-branch exercise when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Normally, I'd ignore it. But then I saw the name. Dad. A chill passed over me. I excused myself from the meeting and stepped into the corridor, thinking maybe, this was the moment they'd apologize. That they'd realize they'd gone too far. That my presence mattered after all. I opened the message. Don't try coming to the family reunion. Your mother and I have decided it's best we cut ties for now. Ethan agrees. This is what's best for the family business and image moving forward. That was it. No explanation. No emotion. Just a formal, cold ejection. From blood. From belonging. From the Wilson name. For a moment, I stood frozen. The base hallway suddenly too bright. Too empty. I stared at the words again. Ethan agrees. I didn't know what stung more, being exiled by my parents or betrayed by the one sibling I thought still saw me as more than a uniform. Back in a meeting, I sat in silence as Teresa laid out the operational map. Her voice felt distant, like a transmission from another world. When the session ended, she approached me. You okay, Olivia? She asked gently. I nodded once, lying through my teeth. Just a headache. But the truth was forming, loud and clear, in the back of my mind. I had co-signed a $25 million loan for my father's company 3 years ago, and now they were cutting me off, pretending I didn't exist. I returned to my quarters, opened my laptop, and searched through my files. I found the documents. My name, my signature, my credit holding up their empire. And now I was nothing to them? No. Not anymore. That night, I barely slept. I kept staring at the loan papers I had signed 3 years ago, the ones that helped Wilson Properties secure a favorable interest rate on a $25 million expansion deal. At the time, I had told myself it was a small gesture. Family helps family. And maybe, just maybe, my father would finally see me as something more than a disappointment in uniform. But now I understood. They hadn't asked me because they trusted me. They asked because I was useful. I wasn't their daughter. I was their leverage. I pulled out my personal files, scanned the full contract, and cross-checked the co-signer clauses. As expected, I held zero authority in the company, zero stake in the profits, but 100% liability if anything went wrong. The loan could still destroy me. The next morning, I requested a consultation with the Army's Legal Advisory Office on base. Lieutenant Barnes, the JAG officer assigned to my unit, sat across from me as I explained the situation. His brow furrowed as he flipped through the scanned copies. You were a co-signer on a $25 million loan for a company you're not involved in? Yes. Have they missed payments? Not that I'm aware of. He nodded slowly. Still, given this message, he gestured to the printed text from my father. I'd strongly advise removing yourself from any legal or financial obligation to their business. And what's the process? I asked. We draft a formal notice of withdrawal to the bank. Your father will be forced to refinance, offer new collateral, or pay the loan outright. I nodded. Let's begin immediately. Later that evening, I sat across from Adam in our small, sun-washed kitchen off base. You're really doing it? he asked gently. Yes, I replied. I'm done being the insurance policy for people who want nothing to do with me. He reached across the table and took my hand. You don't owe them anything. I squeezed back. I know. The next day, I signed the withdrawal documents in Lieutenant Barnes's office. My name was officially removed from the loan. I felt lighter. It was the first time in years I had made a decision that wasn't about earning my family's approval. It was about protecting myself. That morning, my father still thought he controlled the chessboard. By tomorrow, he'd realized the most important piece had just walked away. At exactly 9:17 a.m. Eastern Time, the bank notified Wilson Properties that I had officially withdrawn as co-signer from the $25 million loan. By 8:17 a.m. Chicago time, my phone lit up like a battlefield. Call. After call. After call. First from Richard. Then Linda. Then Ethan. Then a number I didn't recognize, probably their accountant. I was sitting in my base office, reviewing mission reports and logistics for an upcoming joint training with NATO officers. Around me, the Army kept moving, efficient, focused, honorable. A world built on discipline and duty, not shame and manipulation. By lunchtime, I had 27 missed calls, 14 voicemails, and over 40 texts. I listened to one voicemail from Richard. Olivia, this is unacceptable. You've jeopardized everything we've built. Call me immediately. Then Linda's. What were you thinking? Your father is furious. The bank wants additional collateral by month's end. You need to fix this, now. Then one from Ethan, sharp and fast. Becca, what the hell? You blindsided everyone. This is not how we handle things. Dad's losing it. I placed my phone face down. And I didn't move. For the first time in my life, a Wilson family crisis wasn't my crisis. I didn't owe them a bailout. I didn't owe them a damn thing. Around 3 p.m., my aide, Megan, knocked gently and leaned into my office. There are 2 civilians in the lobby asking for you. They say they're your parents. My stomach twisted. What? They came without an appointment, she said. They're demanding access. Security's on standby. I stood, cold settling in my chest. Tell them I'm in back-to-back classified briefings and unavailable. Megan didn't flinch. Already did. They pushed back hard. I had to personally block your mother from the hallway. Thank you, I said quietly. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. They said it was urgent. Financial. Of course they did. Megan hesitated at the door. You want me to have them escorted off base? I nodded. Please. Make sure their visit is logged. She gave a crisp nod and left. I turned back to my desk. The Army's rhythm hummed around me, steady and clean. Orders, reports, briefings, respect. Back home, chaos had erupted. But here, I had never felt safer. That evening, I returned to my quarters exhausted but resolute. I hadn't returned a single call, hadn't answered a single text. I didn't need to. But then, Ethan called again. And for the first time, I didn't send it to voicemail. I answered with silence. Olivia, he said, his voice quieter than usual. Please. Just listen before you hang up. I waited. I didn't know about the text until Amanda showed me. I never agreed to cut you out. That was Dad. He used my name to make it sound unanimous. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because there's something else you need to know. He hesitated, then continued. After you pulled your name from the loan, I started digging. Our new financial officer reviewed everything. Olivia, your name, your signature, is on 2 other loans. One for equipment financing in 2020. Another for a $2 million line of credit in 2021. I froze. That's impossible. I never signed anything except the main loan 3 years ago. I know, Ethan said. The signatures match your handwriting mostly. But I could tell they weren't quite right. I confronted Dad. My stomach churned. And he didn't deny it. Said it was a temporary solution. Claimed he had no choice. That's fraud, Ethan, I said, my voice sharp. He forged a U.S. Army officer's signature. That's not a solution. That's a felony. I know, he said quietly. That's why I'm telling you. I've already had the legal team begin drafting internal corrective measures. I'm trying to fix this. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart racing. My father hadn't just used me. He had committed criminal fraud in my name. Why now? I asked him. Why tell me the truth now, after all these years of silence? Because, Ethan said, his voice shaking just a little, Amanda and I are about to have a kid. And I realized I don't want our child to grow up in a family that lies, manipulates, and uses people like tools. There it was. Honesty. Too late to undo the damage, but enough to break the cycle. He paused. He wants to meet you, Dad. He's flying to Chicago. Wants to talk. Noon tomorrow. Palmer House Hotel. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to see his face. I didn't want apologies. But part of me wanted closure. All right, I said. But I have a meeting at 1 o'clock. He gets exactly 45 minutes. I'll be there too, Ethan said. And Olivia? What? I'm sorry. For not standing up for you sooner. I didn't reply. But I didn't hang up either. The Palmer House lobby gleamed with old-world elegance, golden chandeliers, velvet drapes, and polished marble columns. It felt theatrical, like the perfect stage for a family drama. I arrived exactly at noon, dressed in my army officer's formal civilian uniform, my rank insignia pinned clearly on the lapel. I wasn't here as their daughter. I was here as Olivia, an officer, a woman who had survived war zones far colder than her parents' approval. Richard and Linda were already seated in a quiet corner, both looking like they hadn't slept. My father was checking his watch repeatedly, while my mother looked around nervously, as if someone might recognize her and witness the scandal unraveling. They stood when they saw me. Olivia, my mother said with a brittle smile. You look so sharp. I nodded and sat down. You have 45 minutes. Richard launched straight into it. You've put us in an impossible position, he said, leaning forward. The bank is demanding new collateral. Liquid funds are tight. We're having to move assets, cancel investor meetings. Your decision was reckless. I folded my arms. No, it was overdue. We are family, he snapped. And families don't abandon each other over misunderstandings. I leaned in. You sent me a message cutting me out of your life. You forged my signature on 2 financial contracts. That's not a misunderstanding. That's betrayal and criminal fraud. Linda looked between us, visibly shaken. Forged? Richard, tell me she's wrong. He didn't speak. My mother's face turned pale. My God. I turned to her. You were so busy building a perfect image that you didn't notice your husband using me like a pawn. Richard gritted his teeth. I did what was necessary for the business. You would have let this family fall apart over pride. No, I said sharply. You were willing to risk my career, my name, and my freedom to protect your lies. I've served this country with integrity, discipline, and loyalty. You can't even manage that inside your own house. Just then, Ethan appeared. He walked straight to our table, eyes locked on our father. She's right, he said. I saw the documents. You lied. You used her. Richard's face turned red. Don't lecture me. I built everything you two are standing on. Ethan stayed calm. Then watch us walk away from it. My father slammed his coffee cup down. You'll regret this. Both of you. No, I said, standing. I regret thinking that your approval was ever worth chasing. I nodded to Ethan and turned to leave. But as I reached the lobby doors, I stopped and looked back. You may have built Wilson Properties, Dad. But I built something stronger, a life without you. And then I walked out. The next few days moved like a slow wave crashing in the distance, loud but far enough away not to touch me. On Monday morning, my inbox exploded. Emails from Wilson Properties' legal team, messages from their accountants, even one formal letter marked urgent, confidential, requesting that I reconsider my withdrawal and help stabilize the company's financial outlook. I didn't respond. By Tuesday, their tone shifted. Now it was threats. Richard's lawyers claimed that my actions had undermined investor confidence and caused unnecessary market volatility. They hinted at potential defamation charges and breach of family duty, as if that's a thing. But I had seen enough operations unravel under stress to recognize what was happening. This was not strength. This was panic. Meanwhile, my army base remained solid, grounded. Teresa, my commanding officer, called me in for a routine debrief and surprised me by saying, "You handled that with honor, Olivia. Most people would have retaliated. You stood your ground." I nodded, quietly grateful. But the real surprise came Wednesday evening. Ethan called. His voice was somber but focused. Dad's had to liquidate part of a luxury division to meet the bank's demands. They're downsizing 3 properties, and the board is considering removing him from the executive chair. I blinked. That fast. Investors are spooked. The forgery shook confidence. He paused. Also, the legal team looked into it. You were right. The forged documents could have destroyed your security clearance. That made my stomach clench. The very clearance I had spent a decade earning, the same clearance that allowed me to serve on international missions, train allied officers, and command units, could have been lost. All for someone else's greed. Ethan continued. I've initiated a restructure. We're separating family from corporate governance. I'm taking over day-to-day operations, and I'm cutting Dad off from executive decisions. I didn't say anything at first. He added, Amanda says hi. She wants to invite you and Adam to dinner when you're back in town. I let out a small laugh, the first in days. We'd like that. That night, Adam and I sat outside on the small balcony of our off-base home. He passed me a glass of red wine. You okay? He asked. I nodded. For the first time in years. I think I am. He raised his glass. To peace. And I raised mine back. To earning it. 3 months later, Chicago felt different. Lighter, brighter, freer. My transfer request had been approved, and I was now posted at a strategic Army command unit with a focus on training Allied personnel. I still wore the uniform proudly, still led teams, signed off on operations, mentored junior officers, but something inside me had shifted. I was no longer running for approval. One quiet Friday afternoon, while reviewing field readiness reports, I got a call from the Army Inspector General's office. They had completed an internal inquiry regarding the loan fraud. They confirmed what I already knew. If I hadn't removed my name and the forgery had surfaced through a background audit, I could have lost my rank, my clearance, and possibly even faced an investigation myself. Your withdrawal, the officer told me over the phone, was not only justified, it may have saved your entire career. I thanked him, hung up, and sat still for a moment. That's what they nearly cost me. Everything I'd worked for. Everything I had built. But instead, I had walked away stronger. That weekend, Ethan and Amanda visited Chicago. Adam and I invited them over for dinner. Simple food, laughter, no performance, no politics. Ethan helped grill. Amanda and I talked about baby names. For the first time in my life, my brother sat across from me and didn't talk over me. He asked questions. He listened. At one point, when Adam stepped inside to grab more wine, Ethan turned to me. You're building something real here, he said. I envy that. I smiled faintly. You could too, you know. You don't have to follow Dad's version of legacy. He nodded slowly. I'm starting to understand that. Before they left, Amanda gave me a gentle hug and whispered, You're not forgotten. You're just finally free. As the door closed behind them, Adam pulled me close. They seem different. I nodded. We all are. And in that still moment, no noise, no pressure, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. A few weeks later, I stood by the lake, the wind coming off the water brushing gently against my face. The Chicago skyline shimmered behind me, but my focus was on Adam, who stood just a few feet away. He smiled, nervous, warm, steady. Olivia, he said, kneeling down in the sand and opening a small velvet box, you are the most loyal, resilient, and honest person I have ever known. You taught me what real strength looks like. Will you marry me? My breath caught. I thought of my past, Of every moment I had silenced myself to fit into a family that wanted image over truth, control over love. And now here was this man kneeling, not asking me to shrink, but to stand beside him as I was. Yes, I said softly. Absolutely yes. As we embraced, I knew this life we were building, quiet, grounded, rooted in truth, was worth everything I had walked away from. Back at the base, news of the Wilson Properties scandal had faded into background chatter. Richard, after immense pressure from investors and media scrutiny, stepped down as CEO. The forged signatures, while never made public, were quietly settled with internal compliance investigations. I never filed formal charges, but Ethan ensured the documents were destroyed and policies changed. Linda never contacted me again, but I had already let go of needing closure from her. Instead, I filled that space with the people who stood by me: Teresa, who nominated me for a commendation for leadership under pressure; Megan, who handled every difficult moment with grace; Ethan, who finally grew into the brother I never had before; and Adam, who saw the real me before I ever did. One crisp fall morning, as I stood in uniform before a room full of graduating officers at a leadership seminar, I spoke words I never thought I would. The hardest battles aren't always fought overseas. Sometimes they're fought in your own heart, against the people who raised you, the versions of yourself you thought you had to become. But when you choose integrity over image, when you walk away from what breaks you, you don't lose your place in the world. You create it. Later that night, Adam and I sat on our balcony, sipping coffee and watching the city sparkle below. "Have you thought about inviting your parents to the wedding?" he asked gently. I looked out at the lights. Part of me wants to. Another part knows they were never truly there to begin with. He nodded slowly. "Whatever you decide, I'll support it." I smiled. "You know something?" "What?" "My family is here. Right now." He reached across, took my hand, and squeezed. "Then we're exactly where we belong." And in that moment, I wasn't Olivia Wilson, daughter of Richard and Linda, Army officer or co-signer or disappointment. I was just Olivia. Whole. Free. And finally home. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to walk away from the people you thought would stand by you, just to find peace on your own, you're not alone. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is say no to the legacy others built for you, and yes to the life you truly deserve. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories of truth, courage, and starting over. And remember, your worth isn't defined by who abandoned you, but by how you choose to rise.